Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? My name is Rob Carmona, and welcome back to another episode of Rob the Mic. First and foremost, I wanted to thank you guys for last week's episode. Like, the reception of it, all of the interactions, the likes, the reposts, everything. For some reason, emotional tennis seemed to hit pretty hard. And also, thank you guys for the positive reactions as well regarding the reels and all those things that I'm going to start posting. So every week, what I want to do is start taking pieces from every single episode and start posting those from here on out. And I know I had done that briefly when I was playing which you could see behind me, the We're Not Really Strangers game. But for some reason, I kind of dropped it, and I don't know why I did that. But bringing it back with this one, I know it kind of came out of nowhere, as with most things happen with this with this podcast, excuse me. I feel like it was time. It was time. I was trying to think of something else to wrap in, to bring in so I can interact with you guys, things that you can share, pieces that you can take. Not that so that you wouldn't have to listen to the entire episode, but just little snippets so that you guys, for those of you who are new to this, welcome. And for those of you guys who are curious about it, there are good ways so you can understand what the podcast is about. Because yes, it's about my life. Yes, it's about how things affect me, the people that I love, the things that I do, the things that I'm interested in. But it's about how I can take my life, take pieces away from it, and give it to you guys so that you guys can turn around and take those little things and sort of apply them to your dailies. So I really want to try to continue to keep publishing those things and keep doing those things, keep interacting, and keep going about it the way that we're going about it right now. And the reason why I say we're going about it is because it's not just me, right? It's you guys as well. And without your guys' support, there's no way that I'd be able to do this. There's no way that I would really continue doing this, because in the same time, I'm trying to do something. Yes, this is for myself. It's very therapeutic, believe it or not, which I'm assuming a lot of you guys would also think that, right? Like, it's very therapeutic to just talk about certain issues and go through it in certain ways. But it's just really nice to sort of build a community and build an understanding that we're all here for the same reason. And we're here for mental health. We're here for love. We're here for positivity. We're here for life. We're here for all of those things. And I want to make sure that this stays that way. I want this to be the safest place possible, and know that every week when you come back, you know it's going to be something good. You know it's going to be something to feed your soul, to feed your mind, to feed your heart, that you're going to be able to take bits and pieces and maybe head home to your partner and say, hey, you know what? I heard something today, and I'm kind of curious on what your stance on this whole subject is. Or you're going to hang out with your friends. You're going to go grab a drink or go get some coffee, and you're going to say, hey, you know what? I heard something this week. What do you think about this? What's your take on it? So I'm trying my absolute best to create something with you guys. And again, because of your love, your acceptance, your support, it seems like it is growing, and it's really awesome to see. And it's kind of hard to explain it, but I'm trying my best right now. But what I can really boil it down to is thank you. Thank you for everything that you guys do. Thank you for all the love that you guys keep pouring into this. And hopefully, as time goes on, we can continue to see this grow, and who knows what will happen, right? But I'm excited. I'm here for it. Thank you guys for being here for it. And thank you for everything that you guys continue to do. So going off of emotional tennis, there was a lot of things that were spoken about in that episode that seemed to really hit home for a lot of people. I'm not going to say it was one of my higher DM'd. Like, usually I get DMs about episodes, right? And I will have conversations with certain people, and we'll go through it and things like that. But this episode, maybe because of the reels, it seemed to have the most engagement, the most understanding. So this is the reason why I'm going to continue to do those reels and continue to make pieces that you guys can interact with and repost and share and things like that. But going off of that, it really had me thinking. It really had me thinking in the whole shot. And I'm like, what are some major topics, major things that have been going on? Like, I needed to take a step back, because yes, I was zoning in on certain things, but I feel like there's overarching elements that we can all kind of take bits and pieces from. So some things that I wanted to talk about this week was, I guess as I stepped back, I started to look at the idea of conflict and the constant of it. Another thing, because it seems I've been having a lot of these, and as I've been talking to people around me, they've also been having them as well, which is avoiding uncomfortable conversations and just the importance of them, what they do for you, what they do for the other person, what they can do for the relationships, whether it's a friendship, romantic, family, anything like that. And this is only slight. We're only going to get into it a little bit today. This is probably going to be something I'll have to spread out throughout episodes, but I also want to talk about boundaries. And what we're going to get into about boundaries is setting them, staying true to them, and a couple other little things here and there. And of course, as we always do, we're going to finish out the episode with some pretty good advice that I got. So what I want to get into as far as like conflict and the constant of it is I feel like things have just been compounding over time and it's not slowing down. And I know a lot of you are also probably listening being like, well, that's life, right? That's life. Like nothing's going to stop. Nothing's going to slow down. Just because shit went down for you doesn't mean it's going to slow down for anything else or anyone, which is true. And I understand that. But I think there's also a level where it's just things are constantly fucking happening, because as I talk to more people about this shit, not everyone has the same experience, right? Like we're all going to deal with life differently. We all have different things that go down in our lives. So we don't all experience the same thing at the same time. But again, I've been noticing a constant flow of conflict in my life, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, whether it's in my family, especially in my family. We've been facing a lot of conflict as of late. And I'm trying to get a grasp on it, even just to kind of roll through it. And I don't understand what the fuck is really going on. So like for a brief example, and I think I had mentioned it last week, or maybe, yeah, I want to say I mentioned it last week. So my uncle passed, of course. Then I had an aunt that just passed, went to her funeral, did that whole thing. I have another uncle, which is my grandfather's brother, who just had a major surgery yesterday. It was like, ended up being like an 8 or 9 hour surgery. And another problem with that is they also found something cancerous that's aside from the surgery that he was having. So just family wise, again, it's like boom, 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 boom. And I don't understand what the hell is going on. And it's not just in my immediate family. It's like extended family too. And just the people around us, like everyone's kind of experiencing this really major amount of strife. And it's, where do you get your grip? Like, how do you get your ground when you feel like you don't have anywhere to stand on if something's hitting at you from every point, every angle? So I think what I'm finding to be the biggest, I'm not going to say reliever, but biggest helper with the entire situation is removing myself from the situations at hand, depending on the conflict that comes up, right? So let's say a certain situation comes up with a family member, like I have an aunt or an uncle and there's some sort of conflict there. If I need to remove myself from the situation, whether it's like someone's chismeando or something like that, or it's something that I don't literally need to be involved in, I will remove myself. Simple as that. If there's issues with friends, or I start to feel that there could be some sort of conflict, it's not that I'm starting, how would you say, like avoiding the issue. It's just I'm removing myself for the moment because I don't need it right now. I don't need these kinds of problems. I don't need these issues. I don't need these things. So I'm having to really look at things from afar and understand, okay, the conflict isn't going to stop. So how can I not alleviate, but start to compartmentalize certain things to where I can handle it as it comes. And even when it does come, like at least I understand what to do with it for that matter. So, well, first off, actually, and we hold on. We need to address this whole camera changing whole issue thing going on right now. So I ended up having some technical difficulties and like a total dummy, I didn't charge my camera battery. So I have my camera set up right here behind my MacBook and it's just fucking dead. It's dead. So I was like, dude, I'm not gonna be able to record until later, but I'm like, nah, it's cool. We're gonna continue and I'm gonna use my MacBook camera and it's not bad. I'm not mad about it. So we're going to use this just for today. I promise this is not going to be a normal thing. This will be the whole, hopefully one of the only episodes that we shoot on here, but jumping back to the topic. So yes, it's just, again, it's not avoiding the issue. It's just putting myself in a place where I know I can handle it and I know what to do with all of these things. So one of the other things that's going on with conflict, or at least I've been experiencing at the same time, is avoiding uncomfortable conversations. And whether I've had to have them with family, whether I've had to have them with people I'm romantically involved with friends, like they've been all across the board. I don't think there's been a time as of recent that I haven't had to have some sort of uncomfortable conversation, and it's not ideal. I don't like it. I mean, and it's weird saying that because I thrive in awkward, I guess, positions. I thrive in confrontation. Like I do really well, which I know is it's a weird thing to say, right? Like, oh, you do well with confrontation, but I do. And with that being said, this is funny because I remember when I was a kid, I have family friends who are involved in all kinds of stuff, right? Like I have one, was kind of like my uncle and then ended up fading out, but he's a lawyer. And he was always like, dude, go into law school. And I'm like, dude, no, it's not my thing. Like, I love it, love to argue, love to defend, but I'm like, no. And I also excelled in that when I was in school, especially in college. I ended up taking like a few law courses and things like that. And anytime there was like some sort of mock trials or anything like that, thrived. It did really, really well. But again, not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life because that amount of stress would take me the fuck out. Because I saw also what it was doing to my buddy, which was my uncle's friend. But again, saw him as my tío. So I've watched him for a very long time. And I see what it's done to his health. And I was like, God, thank God I didn't go that route. But again, there's certain times in your life where you have to have these conversations. And it's the best thing for the relationship, whether it's the friendship, like whether it's with your boss, whether it's with anything. Like sometimes having these conversations is sort of what sets a boundary. It kind of gets everyone to understand where you each are coming from. I think that's what's really, really, really important. So something that I read, I'm going to read it to you guys really quick. And it's about avoiding uncomfortable conversations. So avoiding uncomfortable conversations to keep the peace or I guess I'm not really going to read it to you guys. I'm going to talk to you guys about it. But we avoid uncomfortable conversations to keep the peace, right? Or at least we think that. But in fact, we need to face the uncomfortable conversations out of love and in service of that love we have for the other person. Because again, we're trying to do it to keep the peace, but in fact, we're fully going around the issue and fully going around what needs to be discussed. And in fact, most of these conversations that need to be had will strengthen everything within that relationship. And the reason why I say that is even as of late, I've had to have a few of these conversations. I've had to have some of them with my mom. I've had to have some with my aunt. And I've had to have some with friends. I've had to have some with people I've been romantically involved with. And it's tough because they're conversations you don't want to have. And all of these things have been different. But I've also noticed that with every conversation that's been had, there's been some sort of strength and clarity that's come out of that. And it's because of the love that I have for the relationship. That's why I want to have these things. So I want to have these talks. I want to have these understandings. I want the person to know, like, hey, this issue that's at hand, we need to discuss it, or I at least want you to know where it is that I'm coming from, and I want you to know how I feel. And hopefully you feel safe enough and you feel comfortable enough where you can come to me with this issue as well, or that you can just speak your mind on how it makes you feel, right? Because like I've talked about it before, when you're having conversations like this, or with your, it's your partner, whether it's your parents, doesn't matter. You have to create a safe space. And I say have to because it's something you really do have to do. You have to create a space where you, yourself, and your partner feels comfortable sitting down and saying, hey, okay, let's put it out on the table. And that if something goes wrong, you're not going to react a certain way. You're not going to be upset. You're not going to yell. You're not going to anything like that, because that's not what needs to happen, right? You're trying to have a calm, cool, and collected conversation about whatever it is that's going on. And if something does get out of hand, it's also very important for you to realize and recognize that exact moment and say, hey, you know what? Let's take a minute. Literally, let's take a minute, take a breather, depending on where you are. Let's say you guys are parked somewhere in your car. Take a second. Maybe somebody takes a step out of the car. Take a couple seconds, go breathe, come back to the situation. If you guys are having a conversation in a house, your apartment, take a step out of the room. Maybe, step away to the restroom. Gather yourself a little bit. Because I get it. Sometimes things can get hot. They can. Things can make you upset. Things can make you feel some sort of way. But what I want you all to remember is when you're in these situations, remember how you would want to be spoken to. Remember how you would like to be spoken to. That if you wouldn't want somebody going off on you, so why would you want to go off on somebody else? No matter what the situation is, no matter what the news that you receive is, you still have to be able to understand, keep, and nurture that safe space. Because again, some of the conversations that I've had to have in the last few weeks have been really rough for multiple reasons. And I've heard certain things that I didn't want to hear. I've had to process things that I didn't want to hear, and I've had to process them right then and there. I didn't have a second. And even if I stayed quiet for a moment and I'm just processing, I would let my person know, whoever it is that I'm speaking to, hey, I just need a minute. That's all. I just need a minute, because what I wasn't expecting, what I just heard, and just understand that I'm not okay. Give me a second and we'll come back to it. And sure enough, even recently, I've had a situation where I was about to have a conversation, a very, very heavy conversation. And I was in my truck with this person. I had to step out of my truck. I was like, hey, do you mind? Like, even before having the conversation, which we were getting ready to have. And this was my doing. I'm the one that wanted to have this conversation. But I said, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. Do you mind if I step out for a second? They said, okay. Yeah, of course. That's fine. So I stepped out of the truck, walked to the back of it, and I just leaned against my taillight. And I was just sitting there like, okay, it's fine. Everything's fine. Take a deep breath, bring myself back to ground zero. And then I was able to step back in and have the conversation. I felt safe. I felt supported by the person I was having the conversation with. And that's all I could ask for that moment. It's all I could ask. So again, we try, or we think that avoiding uncomfortable conversations is what keeps the peace, but in fact, it actually stirs up something deeper. On the surface, yes, you're keeping the peace, right? Because you're avoiding what the issue is. But that's the whole key thing right there. You're avoiding what the issue is. That's what you don't want to do. And if you're doing it, you're having the conversation out of love and in service of that love. It's very important to remember that. Very, very important to remember that. Because I think, once again, this isn't something that's taught. As soon as I heard this, I was like, oh my God, dude, I got to share this with everybody, because I've never thought about it that way. Never in my life have I thought about it that way. And another really important one too, which I think is really slipping through the cracks nowadays, is having those conversations in person. Like, instead of over the phone, or a really big one, a really, 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 really big one is via text. I personally have an issue with that. I don't want to text about a major problem. I don't want to talk over the phone about a major problem. Or even about any problems for that matter. It doesn't have to be major. It doesn't have to be insanely detrimental. But I want to have these conversations in person, face to face. I want us to feel each other's emotions. I want you to understand how this is affecting me. And I also want to understand how this is affecting you. It's not a fully selfish situation. For some situations with different people, it might require you just for yourself, that you just want to display what's really going on and how this may be affecting you. So it can be a very selfish situation. But regardless of being selfish situation, this is something I think is a major problem. Major, major problem. And it's funny because last night I was just watching TV, just whatever, but nothing was feeding me. Like I didn't feel any sort of need or want to watch TV. I was just kind of watching it because I was eating, and I was like, you know what? F this, man. I'm gonna get on YouTube. I'm gonna go do some self work. Let me see if I can find something that's gonna feed me a little bit. So I ended up, as I've mentioned his name before, I ended up on Jay Shetty's page, and I went to watch a certain conversation he was having with a therapist. The episode was about an hour and 10 minutes. So I'm watching it. And they actually ended up talking about this topic, which is funny because even throughout the day, as the days come up to these episodes that I record them, I sit there and I open up my notes. Like right now on my computer on the left side, I have my notes open. But I sit there and I take my notes and I try and figure out what it is that I'm going to talk about. I try to organize it in some way. That way I don't get lost in my thoughts, right? So I thought it was interesting that I was going to speak about that today. I had already taken my notes. I had already put my stuff down. Next thing you know, there's Jay and this therapist speaking about this exact problem, about the issue of avoidance, why people avoid certain things, where it can stem from, that it can stem from childhood and things like that, and relationship traumas. And a lot of this episode just so happened to do with relationships. And it's not that it had to be about that. Again, I wasn't looking for it. It's just something that I saw. It seemed interesting. So I'm like, let me check it out. But something that the therapist was talking about is this problem, right? Because, okay, she talks about, this is a good one. This is a really good one. She talks about this example with one of her clients. And she says that this couple had come in to her office. They were having some issues, this, that, and the third. And the girl was talking to the therapist, I guess prior to the couple coming in or something like that. But either way, it still stands. She was talking to the therapist about an argument that they were having. And the therapist is sitting there looking at her, listening and saying, okay. And I guess as she's taking notes and as she's processing, she's like, dude, how long was this conversation? Because God, the way that you're explaining it and the way things are going, this thing must have been going on for like 5 hours. Turns out this girl was having a major, serious conversation about the relationship via text. And this had been going on for days and days and days. So this girl was carrying all this stress, all this anguish, all these bad emotions and bad feelings because it was being dragged out via text. But think about it, right? Like, it's like I just talked to you guys about. Imagine having the conversation in person, and just for her sake, how quick it could have really been. It would have been completely different. Everything would have changed. For example, even if the conversation was 5 hours, hey, I don't know about you guys. I've definitely had my 5-hour conversations. I know in my last relationship, I've definitely had those conversations. Well, we've had to sit down. All of a sudden, we start talking at 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. We keep going. And granted, yeah, we're taking breaks in between, or we're just kind of going through it. But it's like 10 o'clock at night and we finish the conversation. Or we go out to dinner. We start talking about it at dinner, come home, keep going. Next thing you know, it's 2, 3 in the morning and we're finishing up the conversation. But granted, the way I saw it, even at those times, I still agree with it now. I'd rather have those conversations then and there, deal with it right now, instead of, for example, like this poor girl dragging this conversation out for days, dude. Like, for myself, that shit fucks me up. And if I'm having an issue with my partner, that's where all of my attention is. My work suffers, my everything that's around me suffers. I can't focus. I'm not there. I'm not in it. So one thing that I will give you guys advice on, or at least, I don't even want to say it's advice. It's just, I wish there was something more, like another word beside advice. So like, I don't even know, but let's just call it advice. I advise you guys to have these conversations in person. Avoid the text, avoid the phone calls as much as you can. As much as you can. Ask your partner kindly, hey, I would much rather have this conversation in person if that's completely okay with you. And if it's not, then let's make sure that we revisit this at a time where we can have this conversation in person. Because again, I think it's very important as partners, whether it's romantically, whether friends, family, anything, It's very important that you two are there face to face so that you can feel each other's energy, understand each other, and really physically see what it is that's going on. Because tensions may be super high, but maybe in person they kind of slow down a little bit. Maybe you seeing how the other person is reacting when you're speaking, maybe that slows you down a little bit. And maybe vice versa. Maybe vice versa. You need that sort of physical connection. You need that understanding, that energy exchange, because I think something that we all can really appreciate, and I know that a lot of us appreciate it, especially because we've had to experience it in the last few years. So the reason why I say this is because remember COVID and the whole thing where like people weren't kicking it. We weren't seeing our friends. You're seeing them via FaceTime. I know a lot of you remember what it was to see your friends, to see your family for the first time in person. It changed everything, right? You could have been FaceTiming every single day for 2 years. It wouldn't make a difference. The moment that you saw that person in person, it was like those 2 years just got thrown out the window because nothing is going to match what you just experienced and what you are experiencing right now. So that same level of energy exchange, that love, that compassion, that understanding is the same thing that applies in this situation. So you have to, in my opinion, have these conversations in person. And if it's not something that you're into, it's things that you don't like to do, I understand. But trust me when I tell you, it is the best thing for you. It's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for your person that you're speaking with. It's the best thing for the relationship, whatever that may be, whether it's family, whether it's romantic, whether it's friends, anything. It will only strengthen your bond. It will only strengthen your understanding for each other because you're doing it out of love. You're doing it out of respect. You're doing it in service of that relationship. And I think a lot of the times we forget that or it becomes misconstrued. And again, avoiding isn't where it's at. Remove the avoidance from the situation. If you need time, then tell the person that you need to have this conversation with, I need time. Give me a couple days. I'll reach out to you or whatever that may be. Give me a couple hours. Give me a moment, kind of like what I had, right? Recently, I had to step out for a little bit. And it was maybe a minute or two. Probably not even a minute. It just felt like forever. But I had to step out for a second. Communicate those things. Communicate your needs. Communicate your wants. Keep those lines of communication open as often and as possible as you can. Because that's what's going to save you. That's what's going to save the relationship. It's what's going to save your friendships, your family, everything. Communicate at all times. At all times. Trust me. And when it comes to shit like this, it will only benefit you guys, whatever the situation may be. And the reason why I talk about all these things is because it's the perfect segue going into boundaries. And the few things that I want to talk to you guys regarding boundaries is setting them. That's one of those things I want to talk to you guys about. And that in the fact that when you're setting a boundary, you're deciding something for yourself. Remember that you're deciding something for yourself and what you will do about the situation or whatever it is that you need to set a boundary about. But that does not set a precedent for what the other person will or what they have to do. Just remember those things. When you're setting boundaries, this is for you. This is something that you're saying, hey, for example, you have a certain trigger. You are telling this person, you're communicating with this person. If this comes up, I am going to do X, Y, Z, or I'm going to feel X, Y, Z. Do you understand? The other person can fully not respect that and say, fuck it. But the boundary that you're setting, again, isn't for them. It's for you. So brief example. If, like last night, same thing when I was watching this Jay Shetty episode, this is also something they talked about too. Not entirely, but there was an example of about setting a boundary. And same thing, another couple had gone into this therapist's office and the girl was saying that one of her triggers was talking about weight, I guess in a certain way. So she told her partner, hey, I don't want us to talk about weight. I don't want us to talk about this, that, and the third. it ended up getting to the point where the guy couldn't really talk about anything, couldn't talk about food, couldn't talk about working out, couldn't talk about anything, even if it was for himself. Like, oh, I got in a killer workout today, because it would trigger her, because somehow it would like lead off to weight. So they had to eventually talk about it further to understand, okay, what boundary are you exactly trying to set? And that so I can understand how to help you. And so I can understand what I can cross, what I can't cross, and the reasons behind that. Because the thing is, when you're setting boundaries, sometimes you need to get people to understand where you're coming from with that boundary, right? This girl didn't want to speak about weight because of some issues that she's facing, some issues that she's dealt with since she was a little kid, since she was very, very young. So once her partner understood that, he was able to say, oh, okay, cool. Because those are things they had never communicated before. Because when someone just tells you, I don't like it, sometimes there's a reason why they don't like certain things, right? But if you don't communicate what that reason is, the other person isn't going to know. So remember, when you're setting the boundary, it's for you. It's not for the other person. But it is your job to communicate why you're setting that boundary and what it is that you'll do regarding that boundary. Whether it's, hey, if, for example, with weight, hey, if you talk about weight a certain way, or if you say these certain things, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. I'm going to walk away because I don't want to hear it. It's a trigger. It doesn't make me feel good. It's not something I want to discuss with you or really ever, at least for the time being. So please respect that. Or another one could be, let's say you're watching a certain film and you tell your partner, this is a very, I'm not going to say common, but this is an understandable one. Let's say there is a rape scene in a movie that you're about to watch. You have no idea, but let's say prior to this, you and your partner have had a discussion and you say, hey, due to certain things that have happened in my past, whether it's to myself, whatever, regardless, I don't do well with rape scenes. So if there is a rape scene in a film, I will probably walk away. I'll probably remove myself from the room. Please let me know when it's over, or, I'll come back in a few minutes. That being said, that is a boundary that you're setting and that you're communicating, and you're giving a reason why. And again, I'm not saying you have to explain every single thing to every single person, but again, you are setting a boundary. So you need to understand that other people don't know what that is. And if it's your partner, if it's your friend, it's important to let them know, hey, this is why I'm setting this boundary. This is why I'm doing this thing, because it affects me this way, right? And it's up to them whether they're going to respect it, whether they're going to support that, whether they're going to push forward and say, hey, okay, got it, understood. So for example, in a situation like that, one way that you could be supportive, for example, of your partner is if your person is going to walk out, or let's say you see it kind of coming, preemptively say, hey, you know what? Let's step out for a second. Let's do that. You step out. They're already going to know, and I'm sure they will be extremely appreciative of that. And that's you being aware. That's you being aware of your surroundings, of your partner, of their things that kind of make them tick. It shows that you love. It shows a different kind of awareness. It shows self-awareness, spatial awareness. And those things I feel like are far and few now. There's so many people that are so unaware of themselves and the people around them. It's kind of gross. Like, it makes me really sad. It makes me really, really sad. And I see it all the time. All the time. Even with certain friends, whether it's in their relationships and things like that, I'm like, dude, you got to be a little more aware. Like, you can't be saying stuff like that in front of your person. Oh, they're fine with it. It's like, dude, they're really not fine with it, because if you saw their face when you said certain things, you'd understand, like, oh man, you know what? I shouldn't talk like that. I shouldn't say things like that. So, and that's just one example of a way that you could be supportive, of things that you could do. Let's say food is a trigger for some people. Again, like it was with this girl in her relationship, or talking about weight or something like that. Then it's like, okay, well, maybe you find healthy ways to do it, or healthy ways to talk about it, rather than bringing it up in some sort of negative light. Or, as you've been kind of navigating around this person, you kind of understand how to bring things up, right? So it's tough. It's tough because sometimes boundaries make us tiptoe. And a lot of us don't know how to tiptoe around a lot of things. Like, I know for myself, I try my absolute best to be very hyper aware of the people around me, things that are affecting them, what makes them tick. But if I don't understand something, I don't mean it in a malicious way, or it's not that I don't care. It's because I don't understand. And I want to understand. I would want my person or my friend or my family to tell me, hey, this. So I can say, hey, you know what? My bad. Understood. Completely understood. I got it. And another thing that I wanted to speak about is staying true to your boundaries, right? Your boundaries don't have to last forever. That is something that's very important to remember as well, at least in my opinion. I think if you set them, stay true to them for yourself. Stay true to them for yourself. For example, going back to this movie situation with the rape scene, right? Staying true to that boundary, you know what it's going to do if you remove yourself. You're going to feel better because you don't see that. You don't experience it. You don't hear it. You don't get any sort of sensory overload from it. But let's say you ignore that. You stay in the theater and you watch it, and it ruins your entire experience. Because all of a sudden you're triggered. You remembered maybe things that have happened to you, maybe things that have happened to someone that you know, that you love and you care for. So not staying true to that boundary has put you in a situation that's compromised your emotional state. Maybe it's compromised your relationship for the day because you put yourself in that situation, and you not staying true to that, look at where it's got you. Now you feel like things are falling apart. And that's not good. You got to stay true to that. And again, that's a very, very specific, very vicious example. But it is an example nonetheless. And they don't have to be so extreme. They really don't. It could be, let's say you hearing gossip. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to be around the chisme, nothing. You set a boundary. Hey, if someone's going to talk bad about somebody, I'm going to remove myself. Stay true to that because it makes you feel good. I don't want any part of this. Bye. See you guys later. Stay true to that. If it makes you feel better, remove yourself. It's the best thing that you can do for yourself and for people around you. And it shows also, not that you need to show or think about what anyone else thinks or care about what anyone else thinks, but I think it will show people at the same time your strength, your love, your care for yourself, that you're willing to do that, to set a boundary, because sometimes that shit's really difficult to set a boundary. And not only that, but staying true and keeping that line exactly where it is. Because I know myself, I've struggled with that for a very long time. A very, very long time. I know I had issues with my uncle who passed. There were certain boundaries I had to set, and they were hard boundaries. They were really difficult, really, really difficult to follow for a long time. But once I started to do those things, I noticed how it changed myself. I noticed how it changed our relationship between my uncle and I. And it actually helped us more than it hindered us. And granted, we came back because of a very unfortunate situation, but at the same time, we were able to discuss and go through these things like, okay, cool, this is where it's at. So it all depends. It all depends. But trust me, staying true to your boundaries is very, very hard. And I applaud you guys. For those of you who have set those boundaries and you've stayed true to them, please continue to do so. And if you're struggling with doing that, be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Because trust me, every single person that's out there has to be someone that you know that is having a difficult time setting boundaries, or they've had to set it and maybe they've fallen through with it. Or just because you crack sometimes on that, and let's say you fall off track, doesn't mean you've completely gone off the fucking rails. It doesn't mean that. So be gentle with yourself. And another thing that's really important is losing people because of setting them, and how it's not always a bad thing. If you set a boundary and people don't respect that at all, they don't have any sort of awareness of you as a person, they don't care for how you feel, how certain things make you feel, certain subjects, anything like that. You don't need people like that in your life. So when you lose them, does it suck? Yes, of course. Are you going to mourn the loss in some way? Of course you will. But if you were to really step back, is it truly a bad thing that you lost somebody who doesn't respect you and your boundaries? Is it truly a loss if somebody who doesn't give a shit about you and how you feel about losing somebody like that? Because if someone was speaking to you about that, whether it's your friend, your family, anybody, you would probably tell them to do the same. Be like, dude, you know what? Nix those people. Like, get them out. remove that from your circle, remove that from your life cycle, because you don't need it. It's not positive. It's the opposite of positive. It's this super negative, dark thing. No. It's making room for people who will respect your boundaries. It's making room for people who will love you, who will respect you. And granted, that's something I struggle with. I'm not going to say on a daily basis, but pretty often is having to deal with losing people because of setting a certain boundary or saying certain things, and it makes people go away. But it's a part of life. I think we're kind of faced with these different situations where we kind of have to sit there and understand, and we got to figure things out for ourselves, right? We talk to the people around us. We try and figure out, square things away. We are our own architect. We're designing these things around us. We're designing our lives. We're trying to put things in certain places where they fit. And sometimes setting a boundary allows you to draw a hard line so that you know where things can fit against, this wall, this fence. But if it's not there, it's a little too open. It doesn't make sense. You can't really just start putting things. It starts to become a mess. So it's not always a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing. And another thing, it's not necessarily on a boundary topic, but it can kind of fall in line with it, which I think is really important. It's something that I heard, and it spoke to me again. And anytime I hear something like anything like that, I want to talk about it with you guys. I don't try. I want to talk about it with you. I want your 2 cents. I want everything you got on it. I want to hear what you have to say. But something that I feel is important is matching people's energy and to stop feeling sorry about it. Because I feel like we're so used to, especially people who are people pleasers like myself, I will always put other people's needs before my own. And I will always try my absolute best to go out of the way to make people feel good. I want people to feel their best at all times. So when you start matching energies, it starts to really shift things up. It does, whether it's friendships, whether it's relationships, family, it's applied across the entire board. I think even professionals, this is a massive part of that. If someone in your life is giving you 100%, why would you not give them 100%? If you are giving 100% and the other person is not giving you 100%, that's where things start to shift, right? And we can notice that, we can look at it. And sometimes it takes other people telling us, hey, you know what? This doesn't really line up. If someone's giving you 10%, but you're always giving 100, watch what happens the moment that you start to give 10%. Watch and see what happens. And don't feel sorry about it. Don't feel sorry about matching other people's energies. Because again, if it offends them, if it affects them in some sort of way, then hey, you know what? Maybe it's time for you to take a step back and realize what it is that you're doing. And maybe I don't want to be treated like a 10%er. Maybe I don't want to be treated like a 25% or like a 50%er. Because you know what? I always give 100. I give 100 to you. I give 100 to the situation. Why is it that you can't return the same thing to me? And granted, you know what? There are certain times, friendships, relationship, family, work, anything, maybe the other person that's involved can't give you 100%. Maybe they can only give you 50%. And I'm not saying it has to be like this 10,000% of the time. And especially in relationships. This is where it kind of starts to contradict a little bit, but there's a reason for it. Let's say your partner is really tired one day. They come home from work. They really haven't been giving it to you. And I'm not talking about sexually. Don't be nasty. I'm talking about, let's say you've been texting them and they've seen a little dark, just a little out of it. Still, and you're giving 100, what's up, baby? Da, 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 this, that, and the third. Have you eaten today? Checking in on you, blah, blah, blah. They're still not giving it. Come home, you're still feeling it. It's like, oh man, this is funny, but you're still giving 100%. You can feel kind of tired, right? But you doing that, let's say the next day, the shift up is different. They're giving you more, or they come back to meet you up. You guys are giving the same. Say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry about that. Yesterday I was a little down, but getting that energy from you, it was great to feel it all day. Even though I wasn't there, thank you for constantly giving that to me. So that's what I'm talking about. Sometimes in relationships, whether it's a friendship, anything like that, Sometimes it's okay for you to continue to give because that other person might actually need it to come back up. But what I'm talking about is the constant receiving of low energy. Return that. Return that. The same way that I was talking about it last week in emotional tennis, right? If you receive a box or a package that's damaged, that's messed up, return it to sender. Get rid of that. You're going to give me this 10% box? I'm giving that back to you. Bye. Don't come over here with that. If it's not 100%, if it's not perfect, if you're not over here to match this, get this out of here because you already know what the standard is, and a part of setting that standard could be a part of setting a boundary. Maybe you say, hey, you know what? I'm not receiving anything less than this. And if that doesn't line up with you, I don't know what to tell you. That's a personal problem. That has nothing to do with me. I'm sharing, I need this amount. And if you cross this bound and say, I'm here to give you this amount plus more, so be it. Come through the door. You're more than welcome. This place, you are welcome here. Aside from that, stay on the other side. I don't have time for that. And matching people's energy shifts a lot. I've lost a lot of friends that way. That I can tell you. A lot of friends. Where it was always me checking up. It was always me reaching out. It was always me doing things, trying to plan stuff, trying to that. The moment I stopped doing that, friendships died out. I never heard from them again. And some people ask, hey, where's so-and-so? How come you don't kick it no more? I don't know. Ask them. And then when the other person's like, oh, they've never said anything. Well, how come you couldn't say something, right? How come you couldn't reach out and say, what's up? Hey, what are you up to today? What's going on? This, that, and the third. It takes two at all times. So again, it's funny to watch how people shift up when you match their energy because they only gave 10% and all of a sudden you went from giving 100%, you went down to the 10 and they're like, oh, I don't like that. Because they were so used to getting your 100, but now it's like, oh, I'm just giving you what you're giving me. And it can be like that for relationships. Like, hey, well, how come you didn't answer my text? Well, you never seem to answer anything. You answer me back 10, 12 hours later. So I'm also giving you what you're giving me. So if you're giving me that 10, 12 hour response, I will also give you that 10, 12 hour response. Because again, all of a sudden people shift up and they're like, oh, I don't like that. Well, exactly. So then don't act like that. If you want me to give 100, give me 100. You want to give 50? I'm going to give 50 as well. I'm going to meet you wherever you're going to meet me. But understand, I am telling you right now, I will meet you wherever you are going to meet me. But again, for those of you who are struggling with that with different people, relationships, anything like that in your life, start to match their energy and don't feel sorry about it and watch how things change up because sometimes that will strengthen the relationship. And if it doesn't, if it goes the other way, then you know what? It's better. It's better that way because you don't need people like that. You need everybody that I'm talking to right now, all of y'all, every single one of y'all on camera. Everybody, every one of y'all deserves the love that you're willing to give. You deserve the good vibe, the good everything, the light that you're willing to give. You're giving 100. You deserve nothing less than 100. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And also on top of that your peace is worth defending. Never be afraid to defend your peace, y'all. Never be afraid. Always stand up, put your armor on, get your sword ready, get ready for battle at all times. If people come in to disturb that, if they're sitting there and they're here to disturb everything that you are, be ready to defend that. Put your shields up because that's not it. There's so many people that just want to watch the world burn. And sometimes they do it without even knowing, which is kind of insane. But defend that and never be afraid to stand up for that shit because it's going to change your life. Defend your peace. Stay true to yourself. If you exude love, if you exude light, keep that. Don't change that. Stand for it. Stand for it. It's the best thing you can do. And honestly, I've known it. I've seen it. I've experienced it, what it is to defend my peace. And I'm still working on it every day. It's a struggle. It is. It's a massive struggle. Sometimes I don't know what to do. Sometimes I don't know how to deal. But I'm working on that. I'm working on it incrementally, a piece at a time, to where I can be at a point one day that I can stand on a mountain and say, this is my space. And unless you're willing to come here with this, I got to stand for it because I'm not here for it. I'm not here for anything less than peace. I'm not here for anything less than love. If you don't have that, see ya later. One thing that I want to finish with, of course, as we always do with our advice, right? Going on, this is a part of this is coming off of that uncomfortable conversation part, because when I heard this, again, it shifted things up for me a little bit. It kind of changed the way I thought about stuff. And it's to remember this, that peace isn't the goal of a relationship. Love is. Again, peace isn't the goal of a relationship. Love is. Whether that's a friendship, whether it's family, whether it's romantic. Anything that you do isn't for the peace of the relationship. It's for the love of the relationship, the love that's created, the love that lives in this relationship. So moving back to the conversations, right? Having tough conversations, don't avoid them. And you're not avoiding it to keep the peace. You're going to have them. Have these conversations. Face these things because of the love that you have for this relationship. Because of the respect, because of the understanding that you have for the relationship. It's very important to remember that. And I had never heard that before. I had never thought about it like that. I always thought it was, keeping the peace, keeping everything cool, making sure everything's good. Sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you got to shake it up a little bit because you love somebody, because you love this. And if there really is love, if there really is positivity, if there really is light, then those things will always prevail regarding any situation. And you do it out of love. You don't do it out of peace. You don't do it out of anything else. You do it out of love. So remember that. It's extremely important. Once again, peace isn't the goal of a relationship. Love is. Share that. Spread it. Talk to people about it. Because I'm curious to what you guys think about that too. And I'm not saying that, peace, that you don't want peace in a relationship. That's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. But that remember, there's a certain base. And that base, in my opinion, is also what this is saying, that it revolves around love. Everything comes around it. It's kind of like setting rings. And as they get bigger, the center of it all is love. All of those things, they kind of lead you to this one place, which ultimately is love. So I really hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. And as I can keep creating these things for you, and I will continue to move on this whole path of reels and so on and so forth, keep interacting, you guys. Send me messages, comments, share, all the things, because we want to keep spreading this message. We want to keep talking about this and keep this community growing so that we can keep these conversations alive. Because these aren't just things that we talk about. That's something I really want to get across on this show, is that when I talk about it, it's not just a one-time thing. These are conversations that will live on forever, because these are all subjects that we can learn from and constantly pull from. Because I'm constantly learning and pulling and understanding. And then I take that information and I want to share it with you guys so that you guys can then take that information and then share it and continue this sort of like a wave effect. It's the same thing like I was talking about the rings, right? Like it starts here and it starts to grow here and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually the wave just spreads and it affects everything around you. Maybe a certain concept you heard will start to change things around you. Whether it's boundaries, whether it's, not avoiding conversations, whether it's defending your peace, whether it's now thinking about peace not being the base that love is for a relationship and things and everything around that. So again, keep it moving. Let's keep it going, you guys. I appreciate you, every single one of y'all that tune in, and thank you guys for all the kind comments and everything, all of the advice, all the conversations that we've had. Thank you. I would love to continue those with you. And I don't see any reason to stop, right? So I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for your time, your patience, your understanding, your love. Thank you for rocking with me today, especially with this little issue that we had with my equipment. But it's all right. Next week, we're going to be back on it. So it's all good, I promise. But again, thank you guys. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, an amazing week, a great weekend. And I will catch you guys on the next one.